Let's go. Super. Oh, the clicker. You guys can sit.
Yeah, okay. Oops.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I think that's yours.
Yes. Nothing. Good, we can start. Welcome everyone. This morning we are very pleasured to be presenting and talking and share knowledge about very, very interesting topics which are trending in the industry of logistics and supply chain today. And we are in particular going to talk about what I would call, the title is a little long to be honest, I would call it a marriage of two key technologies, the IoT technology and what we call on a table, on a slide, decentralized distribution ledger technologies, aka blockchains. My name is Jakub, Čtvrtníček, and I am very proud and very delighted to host this session. Let me do a little of introduction to the topics, and then we have our excellent speakers who will join us in this session as well. And we should have also one speaker who will dial in and be online. So many of you know about this Internet of Things, right? Pretty much every device, every mobile phone, every car, everything, there is basically a type of Internet of Things. And we have basically a huge revolution of these items nowadays. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is, as we said, the decentralized distributed ledger technologies, sorry for that, what we call, in some words, a blockchain. There is some sort of a reason why we use two terms, which I think Jens can elaborate a little bit later. The whole point is there is a new type of sharing data and assuring a value is being shared correctly in the industry. Some of you may have been here on Wednesday when we were talking about blockchains and global trade, and we have been already elaborating on that topic as well. Now, the third pillar of this kind of a industrial revolution is new type of business models. All of us we know this B2B, B2C, C2C, or even G2G, government to government, right? Now, with the merger of these two technologies, we actually have a new business models of what we can call device to businesses, or even devices to devices. And suddenly, we are in a totally new realm of a situation. Now, for today, we will not go too much technical. For sure, in the last 10 years, you have seen one of these pictures which explains how this blockchain, how this distributed ledger technology works. You have for sure seen a lot of designs, a lot of communication protocols about how Internet of Things works. Again, our focus is not that, and I have to a little bit discourage you right now, even though it's an interesting topic. We are going to talk primarily about use cases and a value and a differentiation in this segment. I am kind of stealing, if I may, some words from an IOTA foundation. Why we need to talk about Internet of Things, and what is the quote of IOTA Foundation when they talk about it is there's 100 billion reasons why we talk about IoT. But there's a prediction, and I think we are not too far from that number, that by the year 2025, which is about 4 years from today, not too much far away, there will be about 100 billion devices on the globe, somewhat connected to some sort of a backend system, cloud, or even blockchains as such. And each of these devices, including that one that you wear, everyone in your phone, or the one that you look, or the one that you drive, has about 10 and more sensors which produce tons of data. Now, it will be about 12 devices, if you do a math correctly, per person. Now, this is going to be really revolutionary, and it's going to be totally new scale of transactioning than what we talk about today. And a side topic is, many of you may know, there is this shortages of chips. I have studied that shortage of chips in recent weeks, and it's very interesting to know where these chips are located, right? It's starting with the bigger smart devices, and it goes to, at the end, to your electrical toothbrush that is actually running one of these. So we see that this is really all over our life and also permeating into our business life. That's IoT. So it's just to show the importance of this topic. The other topic is back to our blockchains, aka distributed ledger technologies. We have done, or this technology has done quite a journey in last 11 years, right? Every one of you knows Bitcoin, perhaps some of you know Ethereum, or a solution which is done by IBM called Hyperledger. We are by now talking about so-called third, or sometimes even some call it fourth generation of blockchains, whatever the number is. The point is we are getting more advanced with some sort of scalability, and it's really brought to the last detail, to the last device where it can run. And again, Jens may have more details on it. So we have done, or the industry has done, a lot of progress. One thing which is very important, as a little bit of reiteration from our Wednesday session, is what is this blockchain? How does it matter? What is the revolution? Is it only a technology, or is it now a new trading concept or new business model, if you wish, right? Some time back, I have read a book from Don Tapscott, Blockchain Revolution, which is issued, I believe, 2015, 2016. And Don kind of explained it very well. He basically talked about the internet we know as an internet of information, sharing, copying data. And then he described a blockchain as a trust protocol into what we call an internet of value. We are able to transfer something that matters. It will be the money, it could be an asset, it could be a title to a document or to a property in that sense, right? That's on the blockchain side. Now, on the IoT side, or the technological, or the devices side, we know, as we said before, there is tons of devices around our lives in the industry. Each one of them has some sort of a sensor, and they are basically they are everywhere in our lives. Now, this is really a recipe for a perfect storm, which is coming in next few years. Last thing, which I want to kind of mention here, it's a reference to also organization World Trade Organization, which did already few studies and few recommendations to the member countries how to look at blockchain and perhaps how to adopt the blockchain together with the IoT devices. They talk about it as a means to facilitate trade, to smoothen the trade, make it more efficient. And of course, IoT, now either IoTs or some sort of a tax, make a very important traceability mark in that process. Okay, now let me introduce our other three speakers. We have here, next to me is Dr. Professor Alfred Taudes from Vienna University of Economics. Alfred is professing at this university, as well as he's the head of the Research Institute for Supply Chain, as well as for crypto economics. And I think Alfred will inform us a little bit more what comes from the academic realms, what is being done in the Austrian blockchain center, so that's the ABC standing for, as well as Alfred collaborates with a lot of startups and institutions in this segment. Thank you, Alfred, for being here. Second speaker is gentleman Jens Lund Nielsen. Jens is a head of, and I hope I say it correctly, head of global trade and supply chain in IOTA Foundation, which was already mentioned a few times here. Now, IOTA Foundation is bringing quite a new approach into this blockchain, if I may still use that word, space, where it's really kind of geared up to process tons of data from all of these devices. At the same time, Jens has experience from logistics industry, where he used to work in Mars Logistics, working on various projects. Among others was also the introduction of supply chain finances and finance processes to traders, particularly in Africa. So thank you, Jens, for being here. And then we have a third speaker, which should be online. I should be checking with our, is he, can you guys put him on? Okay, super. So Jens, sorry. Marcel is really a veteran of the business industry. Marcel has written a book which is titled Raise the Bar, Change the Game. Here we go. Hello, Marcel. Now you're on screen. And Marcel is basically bringing quite influential and the best lesson learned of how to run a business and how to really challenge ourselves in an adoption of either new technologies or new approaches. At the same time, Marcel is the founder of the IBCS group, which has a stall here, by the way, at the end of the aisle. And we will hear from Marcel about how does he perceive the blockchain in terms of what does it matter to the industry, and how does it compare to an adoption of a barcode some 30 or 40 years ago. It's excellent to have you online, Marcel. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much, Jakub. Nice to meet all of you guys. Hope you're having a good show.
I believe you can see yourself behind us as well. Super.
I can, yes, I can. So I have to behave myself now.
A little bit, yeah. Super. So, okay, so this was an introduction. Before we go ahead, thank you. Before we go ahead and I hand over to Alfred and then to Jens, I think during the talk it will be good that you guys kind of address a few of these topics, right? One of them is this a technology or is it a concept? Where is the barrier between these two, right? And it may be implicitly, answered by your sharing. Second thing is, and I think that's kind of interesting also for me, who is the user eventually here, right? Who are the users that use it? And nowadays we don't talk about user as a persona. We talk actually user is actually this thing, right? This is going to be a trading entity in some ways, which may be on this huge ecosystem, right? And of course, I believe you guys will cover some sort of a value and use cases that you see in the industry. Okay? Thank you, Alfred.
Jakub, thank you very much. A warm welcome from my side. The first time I heard about Bitcoin, which was about 5 years ago, I didn't believe what people told me, because this is a system where thousands of computer nodes collaboratively administer a new form of money, and each one has a local copy of information. And typically you don't think that this is working, right? You would think that you have to have some central authority who has to do this. But Bitcoin and blockchain technology has shown that it is working. So for me, blockchain is a collaboration technology. A technology that changes the basis of the information on which you can collaborate. Because instead of classical data sharing, which is inherently insecure, this technology allows you to keep local copies of data and still keep it consistent and being able to prove certain things. And so we will see a lot of new ways to collaborate. So besides all this crypto stuff and all these cool new words, I think it's a new collaboration technology at the core. And collaboration is also at the core of the Austrian Blockchain Center. This is a research center founded by 5 universities in Austria that collaborate with companies when they want to make innovative projects in the blockchain space. We basically collaborate on the professor level and also on the PhD level. So we want to get our students involved in this new technology, and we also have government subsidies to support our research. And basically we can do anything from basic research up to prototypes. And the first project that I want to show you is a recycling pilot study. You will later from the other 2 speakers hear a lot about how blockchain helps you to collaborate within the supply chain between the different logistic partners. But of course now with recent legislation it's very important to get the customers on board to close the loop. And with our partner Coca-Cola, we have a project where customers get cryptocurrency, get tokens, if they correctly recycle their plastic bottles. So in a way, it's a transferring of the Bitcoin concept to the supply chain concept. You might ask yourself, why do you need a blockchain and why do you have a token? Well, in such a case, the token is more flexible. The token allows you to make privacy-aware applications where you only see the tokens that you have in the wallet, but you don't see the behavior that has led to this awarding of the token. And it also allows you to give incentive systems that are social, because we know from a lot of interactions with customers, of course it's nice to get a personal benefit for doing something good, but they are also interested that organizations do something for the common good. So for example, on the blockchain, Coca-Cola could say for every 1,000 tokens that are generated by the customers through returning the bottles, they would plant a tree. And if this is on a blockchain, everybody can verify that. And this public verifiability is also something very important on a blockchain. So currently in this project, we have written a small app where the customer, when buying the plastic bottle, scans a QR code, and when he scans again the bottle, when he recycled it at the recycle box, he gets a token. And this token can be redeemed for a number of benefits. And we use multi-chain in the back end to store these two tokens. One is this bottle token, which is an NFT, which means that it's unique for each bottle, so that you can trace back which bottle it was, and the reward tokens that the customers get. Currently we are in a trial phase. You can see here how it works. We had it is running now for about 1 week. We had 50 app downloads, and once the people have downloaded the app, they use it quite heavily. Of course, the key point is here, how do we get the people to download the app and use that? Currently, we have a participation rate of 5 to 10%. Let's see how it will continue. Mm-hmm. Of course, you cannot have a participation rate of 100%, and even if there's a law, it wouldn't work. So I am personally a fan of incentives and getting the people to do this on a voluntary basis. Okay. Another application that we are thinking about is more futuristic. Maybe you've heard about the physical internet. The physical internet is a concept that was developed about 8 years ago from Professor Montreux in Canada. And he said, why don't we organize our supply chains like the digital internet is organizing the packet transfer? The digital internet has standardized formats for the messages, and they are not passed by individual competing logistic providers, but they are passed in an open protocol between the different nodes and routed through the system in a collaborative way. And the physical internet has at the core the standardization of the containers and of course the Internet of Things communication. But if you want to really implement the physical internet, you definitely have to have a blockchain infrastructure, because in such an open system you cannot have different information systems that are controlled by different companies. You have to have a global integrated information system, and right. This must be a blockchain. And the idea is to get better utilization of all the transport equipment and also to get a better bundling of all the flows. Okay, this was my part, and I hand over to Jens.
Thank you, Alfred. Thanks so much. Very, very interesting, and happy to be with all of you here today, and also you, Brian, sitting somewhere warmer than the rest of us.
Yeah.
I represent the IOT Foundation, and I have a background from Maersk Shipping before I joined the IOT Foundation. So what I will try to do is to not go too deep into the technologies. I know you challenged a little bit on that, Jakub, but talk very briefly on that. But really more about what are the use cases? How does this translate into the sector that we are working in?
Super.
And you all touched about this a little bit, is, why do we use blockchain in the sector, in trade and supply chains? And I kind of say there's just high level 3 things we use it for. Data is the most prevalent use cases at the moment that we also heard from Alfred, where you actually have knowledge what happens in the supply chain. You have trust in that data. You have integrity of the data. You can also have accountability for the data. Where does it come from? Who was issuing this kind of data? And I think that's one of the most fundamental use cases of the technology. On top of that, there is the value infrastructure. You can transfer values. You can do tokenization and so forth. And you can then transfer those tokens between you and others. And I think the bottles that you were explaining was a really, really cool way of thinking about how we sort out waste recycling and these kind of issues. And the last thing that is not very used right now, but I think will be something we'll see in the future, is the ability of smart contracts. Smart contract is basically you can execute in a trusted way an agreement between parties with a neutral electronical way of doing that, saying that we agree that if the flight is late, I will be paid some kind of reward that happens in an executed if-then environment, a virtual machine, and I will automatically get that reward or that compensation if the flight is late. And it's all happening in a decentralized, trusted way, so nobody can, that agreement is handled by electronic trust and not by an organizational trust. So if we talk about 2 words on IOTA, because it was mentioned, this is a 3rd or 4th generation, but it's a space that is constantly evolving, these technologies, and one of the things that why we find it very interesting to be part of talking supply chain and trade is because the features of the fundamental protocol of IOTA is that it scales very well and it's feeless. And these things are extremely important when we talk about supply chain use cases. The fact that you can predict the cost, you don't have to pay gas or other things to make sure that you can do these kind of things. You can have this trusted internet. So this is important. And I just want to say here that IOTA is like Intel Inside. We're like the Intel. We don't build the features and the functionalities and the applications ourselves. We work with partners who actually build the applications, but using our technology as the fundamental blockchain or distributed ledger technology inside that. So the use cases I'm going to give to you is built with partners, and it's not product that we own in any way. So the first use case I want to share with you is related a lot to the discussions we heard this morning, also about Brexit.
Yes.
Cross-border trade, the ability today that we talk about trade has all these documents you have to fill out. There's all these clearing processes that you have to do when you cross a border, and that happens multiple actors. When I was part of my former company, we did a study. We followed the container out of Kenya to Rotterdam, but we did not follow the container physically. We followed all the communications around it.
Right.
And we found out there was 200 pieces of communication following this container. That was, certificate of origins, the export certificates, the phytosanitary certificates, and so on. But it was also simply emails to each other as freight forwarders. Have you seen my container? Do you know where it is? These kind of instances, is it the port right now, and so on. And that happened between 25 different actors. And it happens as what I was trying to illustrate on the slide, as you see on the left. Right. Everybody has bilateral connections with each other, reaching out. The future of this is maybe the same concept that you were explaining a little bit, the physical internet. The fact that you would have, we call it a data pipeline, but everybody can share the information to one place, like the internet, but in a trusted version, where everybody else can then fetch it from. So you don't have all the bilateral connections, but you just share it on this ledger. And that takes some things around the ledger. it takes that it has to be, of course, you have the immutability of the data there, but also that you have encryption layers on this, so you can decide who actually can pick it up. It's not everybody who's allowed to pick up. Right. This is important information, and we're working in East Africa at the moment. We're working with governments there, working with Kenya revenue authorities and Trademark East Africa and the different agencies there. And what we've done until now is that we've been within all of these agencies. They already have all this information available digitally, but we're building a bridge so that they can share this digital information into this, we call it the TLIP system, Trade Logistics Information Pipeline. And that means it fundamentally changes the way you interact, because today a lot of this happens on papers, and you go from office to office to get a stamp, to inform, you fill in different websites, but everybody can pick the data from this ledger. And we don't build a new system, we just add a thin veneer on all the digital systems that already exist, and they can then share this information. So in that way, we really, sorry, oh, I'm moving too fast here. The idea was that, and I think this is something people forget about the distributed ledger technology, is that it provides data immutability, integrity, but it also provides the ability for distributed way of managing your data. And that is a fundamental thing that we really haven't seen and industry really haven't understood yet. That you can still keep your data in your own databases, but you can show on the ledger where is your data sitting. You can put what we call a hash or fingerprint of that data out at a time when you're sharing it to prove that you haven't altered it, but you don't have to put it into a centralized database. Right. You still have these decentralized way. And the system that we're building with governments in East Africa means that freight forwarders, traders, and so on, in a decentralized way, can access this and just set up their own participation and start to share their data and be part of this ecosystem. Right. So you don't have to centralize, and onboard everybody from a centralized position. What is interesting is that actually the Kenyan government signed a trade agreement with the UK 2 months ago, and they said they put this system into the trade agreement to look at that between UK and Kenya, and I'm really mentioning this because we had discussion this morning about UK.
So I can't resist, but I already have to ask this question. So there is this information pipeline which is enabled by this type of blockchain. Now the notorious question, why it has to be blockchain? I mean, you said that, okay, the traders, the freight forwarders, of course they have their own systems, they connect, but why Kenya would not trust if they buy an Oracle database with some sort of application server, I don't know. So which I believe they also would gain that function, but there must be something extra.
Yes,
so, maybe you meant it, I just want to kind of be a dumb person here. Yes. I want to hear why.
No, it's very true. So you could say, and you have single national window systems in each country that handles relationship happens, right? with the government. But the thing is, when the container gets to Holland or UK, who is the originator of the data? Do then they have to then set up bilateral agreements, government to government, which you could think about, maybe could be imagined.
Which even happens, right?
Which even happens, and in Kenya's case, they have only for phytosanitary certificates, they have that with Holland, with that institute there. But that's only one certificate out of all the different documents. So they have to build that bilateral relationship with, first of all, one country, then with all the other countries. Right. And all the other countries have to do bilateral as well. So you're not really enabling
the trade.
You're not really enabling the thing that you only have to log on to this system once.
Yes.
And then you can show the keys to who has to be involved. Okay. You don't have to do the bilateral agreement every time. Okay. And so that's one thing from nation to nation. But also then you have the huge ecosystem of traders and freight forwarders and so on. And what you really want is want to have data from source.
Correct. From the very beginning.
From the very beginning, and not having the government to be the one who says, we have this data from Palapina and we now give it to the Dutch government that has to trust it comes from Palapina. No, Palapina has to put it out and be trusted that they put it out and be accountable for it. So it's also systematically a new way of thinking about this decentralized way of collaboration.
Super, super. I'll let you finish. I still have one more question to this one.
Love, thanks. Yeah. I wanted to share another use case that I can also see is coming up in the industry that will be very, very important. And we're working with another company called Zebra Technologies. They have the RFID scanners, readers, barcode scanners, RFID readers, printers, and so on. And they already have a massive amount of hardware sitting out in supply chains all over the world. What we're working with them is that you can directly from any of these devices report an event to the Tangle, and then you can start to open up those data silos in these companies. So you get, at the important time that a product passes one of these events, the bottle or whatever it is, you get that information that it was here at that time, and you can even get some kind of business information around, whether is it packed, is it shipped, and so on, and that is to enable, let's say, tier N supply chain use cases, where you have deep down in your supply chain, not only the first tier where you want to know where your products are from, but also that they have a lot of suppliers. To take the automotive industry, they have enormously complex supply chains. And they can't control and have bilaterals, all this down there.
Correct, and we see it with the chips now.
Yeah. And here what we're looking at is how do you actually get information from deep down the supply chain, and you enable all these readers and scanners to automatically produce information. What is on top of this is, one thing is that they have to share the data, but they also have to share it in a language that is universal. So the receivers, whoever they are in the other end, it fits into their systems. And here the GS1 is coming out with a new standard called the IBCS 2.0, which is a supply chain standard that basically is the what, when, where, why, and how.
Right.
You understand that data, you can consume that data immediately. So now we are starting to build a lot of important things together. Data trust, that who has shared it, and they can't alter it, with the edge, with the IoT world, with the Zebra devices out there in the world, with a data format that is also standardized. So this is early stage. Give this a couple of years, and we will start to see something very, very interesting in the way we collaborate and we break these data silos in the industry. This was the two cases that I wanted to share that I thought would be, for the audience here, would be relevant. But we work with a lot of industry, a lot of partners in this phase, with a lot of universities, and it's really about, for us, building an ecosystem that understands these technologies, and that they actually collaborate. Back to your first question, Jakub?
Correct.
It's an ecosystem.
Yeah.
Who's the customer? Who's the user? Well, they are all the customer and user at the same time. So we really need to think about this as an open way and a permissionless way of collaborating.
One more thing before you finish, Jens. Why is it IOTA Foundation? Why are you another startup?
So fundamentally, we have been put in the world to develop the technology and make it open source, like Linux, if you like, something like that. And therefore, we are a non-for-profit, and for us, the only mandate we have is to make the technology available and empower that ecosystem.
Okay.
They building all the startups on top of that.
Okay.
We don't have that mandate.
Correct.
And we are registered in Germany as a non-for-profit, so we will never have that mandate.
Super. Thank you, Jens. Yeah. Thank you. So we have a third speaker. We have Brian Marcel. I hope, Brian, can you hear us? And we're waiting for your...
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can also see you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Well, good afternoon, or I suppose good morning, everybody. I don't know how many everybody is, but you can see me, but I can't see you, which is most unfortunate, and I'd love to have been there in person. But let me just give you a quick overview of my company, the IBCS Group. Hopefully you've all had a chance to check out our booth down on the floor there. Next slide, please. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Brian, do you? Yeah, super. Go ahead.
Can I get them to change the slide, do you think? Jakub?
Is it? Yeah.
Ah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's perfect.
You see us?
Yeah, carry on.
So go ahead. So
Next slide. There, that's it. Just a quick idea of who we are, because we have been around for quite a long time in Central and Eastern Europe, which is our focus. And I'm particularly proud that our Czech Republic company, Taudes, is just celebrating their 30 years in business, which I think is an incredible achievement for any company, let alone a company in Central and Eastern Europe. So many congratulations to them. So our main focus is barcode and RFID solutions across all verticals. So you might wonder, what are we doing on a blockchain panel? And what is our interest? Well, the first thing I want to say is that I want to get rid of any sort of association with cryptocurrencies, the gambling side of it. I think whenever blockchain's mentioned, people think immediately about Bitcoin and things like that. And they don't realize that actually blockchain is the underlying technology that Bitcoin runs on. So without blockchain, you can't have you can't have Bitcoin, or I mean the other way around. With Bitcoin, you must have blockchain. But fortunately, we don't have to have Bitcoin if we're looking at a blockchain solution. And my group's fundamental reason or mission in life is to move enterprise into the blockchain arena. And so they can get the benefits we see from blockchain, just like they did with barcodes. For example, I see blockchain as barcodes Mark II. I think we've already seen that blockchain is essentially a single version of the truth. It gives trust to an ecosystem, and it does that by knowing all the players in the ecosystem to be trustworthy. So they have to have their identity validated by people who have the nodes in the tangle, for example. And the transaction has to be validated as well. And you'll find that a transaction has to start with some kind of digital identification, and guess what? A barcode is a digital transaction or identification. So all blockchain transactions could actually start with a barcode, and that's kind of where we see the synergy. And so just for the few short minutes I've got here, I just thought I'd go through a couple of applications similar to what Jens has done, just to sort of whet your appetite, if you like, of what can be done in blockchain. I mean, it is true and fair to say that this isn't happening overnight. There are lots of proof of concepts going on at the moment. And as far as I know, in our region, there aren't any real use cases as such that have taken off. So it is going to be a 2 to 3 year project, if you like, but no time like the present to start now. And if I could have the next slide, please. And the first one we are really looking at is a real world situation with the COVID, of course. And most airlines now want you to have a digital passport to show that you've been vaccinated. And I've visited a few countries recently, and even going into restaurants and hotels, you need to show you've had a negative COVID test and you've been double vaccinated. So we've actually, next slide please, we've actually put together an actual use of this because I think it's going to permeate more and more, maybe into cinemas, theatres, public events, football matches, and all that kind of thing, as we all learn to live with this COVID. Next slide, please. I think the interesting point is, at the moment, only countries who have an agreement with the EU can verify the EU Green Certificate. And therefore, the system's not open to all. In fact, it's only open to 27 countries. And that's why we've linked it up with the IOTA Tangle, because that opens it up to the world, effectively. And if I look at the next slide, you can get an idea what I'm talking about and what the difference is. So in fact, what we're doing is the actual hospital is opening up, it's putting in a channel to IOTA so that it can put in a public key on the tangle. And this is the big differentiator to, say, other green passes, for example. So the patient will get, if you have a look at the green highlighted bits of this slide, rather than all the other fussy bits, so the patient will get the COVID jab and all the personal data will get, oh, could you zoom in, actually, because I can't read, sorry. It's too small. But okay, basically, he gets, the patient gets a COVID jab, turns that into a QR code, and then at the venue or the airport, it gets scanned. But as I say, the secret here is when it's scanned, the application will seek from the tangle the public key of the hospital to make sure it's valid. And so it's validating both things, the private key and the public key, and thus, as I say, opening it up to the world and not just the EU. Next slide, please. Another example, a favorite one of mine actually, is provenance. Actually looking to see the origins of a product, or in this case, a soft drink called Fact, and you can scan a QR code on the can, and it'll show you where the fact was made, and it'll also give a nice story, a backstory, maybe about the factory or even the person that put the liquid in the can. Because certainly millennials these days want to buy from a trusted brand,
yes,
an ethical brand, and the more they know about the brand, the happier they are and more likely they are to buy. So I think the blockchain offers a fantastic opportunity to trace
yes,
the origins of a product.
yes.
Next slide, please. Just quickly, a few applications that are out in the real world. So provenance, for example, Walmart are using the provenance of all their food. It's called the Food Trust, their ecosystem, to recall food if there's a problem, which at the moment takes about 7 days to find out who actually made it back in the factory. But using the blockchain, it takes about 3 seconds. Jaguar Land Rover is an IOTA application where you can have a sort of a box linked to the IOTA Tangle, and you can drive around in your Jaguar earning tokens for reporting on traffic and weather and potholes, various things like that. And these tokens could be changed into rewards or money for a motorway, for example. Everledger tracks the provenance of diamonds. There are lots of shipping document applications because I think there are about 200 transactions on a shipment. One's always having to phone up for the invoice or the bill of lading, or the bill of lading is fake or the invoice isn't working and whatever. But if the shipping documents are on the blockchain, anybody has visibility to that blockchain and can pick up those documents anytime they like. And of course, they've been validated. Therefore, they must be real and transparent. Pharmaceutical authentication, basically, lots of counterfeit medicines around. This will authenticate that, as well as with fashion. Renault are doing a digital twin of cars so that they have a single version of the truth of their maintenance records and their numerous supply chain applications. And final slide, please. Just so you a takeaway from this, not every application or solution is suitable for a blockchain. So if you have a look at these, and if you can answer yes to all of these questions, then you've got the makings of a blockchain transaction. So is there a need for a shared common database, multiple parties involved, etc., etc.? I'm sure you can read this as well as I. And that's basically all I have to say. So thank you very much for listening.
Brian, one more thing. We would be, so you have a lot of experiences with adoption of a barcode back in 80s, early 90s. And I believe do you see this as another type of, what was it meant back then for the industry to do, start to do barcoding? And what do you see the parallels with the situation today?
Yes, I think the very important thing, one thing we used to get when we started talking to companies about introducing barcodes, and I'm talking the late 70s here,
okay,
is they were terrified of it. They didn't understand it, and furthermore, all the marketing departments didn't like those black and white stripes defacing their products. So that was kind of a battle we had to fight. But mainly our mantra was to take the mystique out of barcodes, and we'd try and do most of the work for the companies to get it started. And of course, in those days, we had the supermarkets. They were pushing their suppliers to put barcodes on. But unfortunately, we don't have that situation with blockchain. But I think the best way to try and get an enterprise to adopt blockchain is to take the mystique out of blockchain. Maybe not even mention the word blockchain, but simply to say that this will enhance your processes, in-house processes. It'll speed things up, it will save you money, it will lead to better security, etc., maybe more trust with your suppliers, and open up innovation. So I think that's the way we need to handle it, so they don't get too scared about it.
Super. I like your word terrified. Barcode was terrifying back then, and I mean, at some point, blockchain is somewhat, maybe not terrifying, but at minimum strange, right? Because we talk about these old architectures, and we see the long hash, and it's just not readable at all, right? So I see also somewhat parallels. Now, thank you, guys. I think each one of you have mentioned that we are at some point of time at some sort of a beginning of the journey in terms of adoption and in terms of when the solutions are coming down the road. Would you guys comment, like, when is the the high time coming? What will need to happen that, you know, there will be the full slide, the avalanche of the solutions, and it will be I can't pronounce this word, so it will be dominating our world, business world or private world. Where is the tip point, right? Is it in the government's hands? Is it we waiting for some sort of a rule, or is this going to be some sort of a social movement, or what do you guys think? Where is when is the bomb going to explode, if I may use these words? Maybe Alfred, you first, and then Jens.
Well, I think it's all these factors in common.
Okay.
Of course, for example, now the EU legislation for CO2 emissions will, of course, create a lot of demand for solutions that track these certificates, where you can trade them, where you have trust in IoT to measure it. But before this government legislation came out, of course, there was a social movement.
Okay.
But I think, and here I'm looking at Brian because he's more at the practical side, one should not think that these processes go very fast. I think it has taken a long time until barcode was basically adapted, because it's a cooperation technology and you have to have different partners on. And it will be a gradual move. And blockchain is a back-end technology. So on the front end, you don't see so much changes, right? But for sure, I think transparency and trustworthy, they are key issues in future types of collaborative environments. So for sure, these things will come, but it will take quite some time.
Okay. Jens, would that be not the case for this information pipeline imposed by Kenyan government, that actually this is the momentum? Yeah. That's why the government?
Yeah, no, and very true. First I want to say I have to thank Brian, because he gave that historical perspective to me as well. And I think that is needed a little bit to understand things takes time, right? I've been on this journey for a couple of years myself personally, and can see all these opportunities and value creation. And I think if we break it down a little bit wide, when do we have adoption? Okay. What are the factors? And there are a few factors. First of all, that's the technology, right? The technology is getting there. You know, what I mean there is it's getting cheap enough, it's getting fast enough, and it has the decentralized nature that it needs to have for really being used, and not just, you know, pretending you have a few centralized databases and call it a blockchain.
I don't need the super hardware to mine the Bitcoin, which I have a hardware farm anymore, right?
Exactly, you have that fee-less structure. So we're getting there. That's the technology.
Right.
Then, you know, the basic technology. Then, when we're building applications using this technology, we always build for stakeholders. We build for an ecosystem. Okay. So you have to have the ecosystem, not only one user understanding it, but an ecosystem of user have to understand it. And getting that kind of trust into an ecosystem to collaborate is the next factor here, which takes a little bit of time. And then the third thing is, what do you communicate in? Because you need data standard to communicate in, because you have many people accessing the same thing. So whatever the solution is, what is communicating using this technology has to be everybody is shared using that data formats. So we have different things at the same time. What is then pushing it? Definitely compliance. US, we see the FDA is pushing there. We're talking to some partners there, especially in food, where you see that push is coming in. I think it's in 2025 or around there. They have to tell the content of food products and where it comes from and show that, and they have to find a solution for that. Yeah. And we see in Europe, it's interestingly batteries, electric batteries. That is a huge push at the moment. And we as a foundation have been selected by the European Commission to be one of those who can provide the future infrastructure for services on blockchain in Europe. And we see that they ask us to look into especially also batteries as one of the push cases. So there's a lot of converging factors at the same time. And you mentioned in Kenya,
Correct.
why I worked very hard when I started was to activate all my contacts in that region. Because I do see government as one of the drivers, because they have a monopoly.
They do.
So
It's a fact.
yeah, that's how it is set up, right? So getting them into the game, I think Kenya will, and Eastern Africa, we will see them take over a lot of things that happen in the rest of the world. You know,
Yeah.
Singapore has the same ability.
Correct,
And we see them being very.
And it's interesting, some of these countries, they really jump the ladder, right? Jump the progression path. They go from totally, not even manual work, there was no work, so to say. Now they establish a process directly on the latest technology, right? So that's an interesting move as well.
They're not
right?
as scared in my,
Yeah.
you know, they kind of maybe been on a fast track
So to say.
technology
Yeah.
journey, and
Yeah.
that means when they project into the future, they're not afraid of taking the next technology, because they're taking technologies faster than we've been used to in Europe, and onboarding them.
Super, thank you. I think one of the other, I think Brian mentioned it as well as a little bit you guys, we see that kind of a unique field for blockchain and IoT is what we call a provenance use case. What means provenance is I know where my wine, where my grapes, or where my mango comes from, right? And I have certain trust that this is A, healthy, B, it is not sourced from either illegal or half illegal conditions, and it's very applicable for global trade, right? Would you agree with me that it's basically, this is the new thing that blockchain brings? Because we never had that opportunity before, and I think you said it, or, sorry, Brian said it, that Walmart spent, I apologize, I don't know who said it now, spent some 7 days to research where an item come from, if they need to, right? So is this a new niche, sorry, maybe not even niche, but new field of, we are now searching for an origin of a good? That's one question. Second question is, I still have a little bit doubt, because how is Mango enabled as an IoT device, right? What's this process? And I mean, maybe I give word to Brian and to you, Jens. How is a physical thing, or a Everledger, right? A diamond. So super, yeah, we trace it, I mean, but what if that person in Africa, you know, the first entry was wrong, right? So your opinion, guys. Maybe Brian, did you hear what we were asking?
Yeah, yes, I did. I mean, I think, unfortunately, blockchain, which is no magic wand, it's the same in any computer system, garbage in, garbage out. So, you know, you can start the whole chain going with poor information. But you've got to validate your processes. I think, this provenance thing is one of the things I'm hoping will drive blockchain applications, because I mentioned the food trust, yes, so all Walmart's suppliers have to use this system. So that's one thing. The pharmaceutical industry, certainly in the States, because I'm on a working group there, all big pharma have directed a working group to find out how to use blockchain in their supply chain for authentication. And I know Jens has mentioned in the past to me, automotive industry is very much adopting blockchain, especially in automotive parts where there's a lot of counterfeit auto parts going along. So I'm hoping a lot of these industries are going to drive the use of blockchain, and rather than having the supermarkets mandating it. But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, thank you. Jens, do you have an opinion on this?
Yeah, I think what you were adding here was a few more trends to why this might happen, right? One is the consumer trend. We want to see where our products are from. And that's not only a consumer trend, it's also a societal trend. Sustainability is higher on the agenda. where's my tuna sourced from? Where's my coffee sourced from?
Tuna, yeah.
And these kind of products. And either you do that for health reasons. I think most consumers are driven by health. But as a society, we see a lot of regulation is coming in again that, you know, you have to have slave-free supply chains. And we can all nod to that. But the complicated part of that is that it goes way down in supply chains when you go to secret rare earth metals and these kind of things in electronics. And these are all and blockchain is one of the solutions that takes the accountability for that data and gives it to the ones who produce things instead of giving it to the brands of the world who then have to audit the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's also a convenience factor, right? I think in the future.
So it's enabled to increase the trust, right? Still, I like Brian's very simple words: garbage in, garbage out. It is, of course, also about a process around it. It's not a self-healing technology. Now, super. Thank you, guys. Now, I think one last point to kind of address here. We are at the WOF Expo, and there's a lot of SME companies here and logistics companies. What would you guys kind of suggest, unless you know, these companies did not yet venture or did not thought, you know, should they kind of register with IOTA and kind of start to explore some of the things? What are the options, as you know, on the individual level, like where to start? If I run a small company in Austria with, I don't know, 20 people, and I do trade, right? Of course I do trade. What should I do, right? And again, we know perhaps it's not yet prime time, but we hear a lot of good use cases of an origin traceability and so on. Maybe Alfred and then Brian, can you guys have your opinion on this?
Well, if you are an SME, definitely you're part of a supply chain.
Naturally.
So the first thing to do is talk to your supply chain partners, because as Jens correctly says is, blockchain is a technology that you cannot adopt alone. It's a collaboration technology. So talk to the people that you collaborate with. Talk about problems, because we humans normally typically blame people. Yeah? But I think in quality management, typically you should start to blame the process first. Yeah? And you alone don't see the whole process, because you're just part of all these kind of things, and you only see what goes wrong. Yeah. So the first step is talk to your partners in an open way, even if you have troubles with them, and try to find out what are the processes behind these issues. And the nice thing about blockchain technology is, if you want to integrate information or something, in the past you always had to have somebody who is the administrator of a central database.
Correct.
And you don't want that, because you have to find one that everybody's trusting, and this guy can manipulate the data and so on. Yeah? With the blockchain technology, you say, I don't want to share all the data, I want to keep them, but some things I want to share, and then I want to trust it. And if you have found that out, you can start in small groups.
Okay. It's a little bit what you say, like talk to your partners, see what is it. I feel like, I don't know what you guys remember, 2006, 2005, there was this Facebook mania, right? It was like, oh, everyone has to be on Facebook. It was also with LinkedIn, right? So at some point, the crowd will bring you there, right? If there's a momentum. Brian, what do you think?
Well, I suppose you've all heard about crossing the chasm. I mean, we're in very early adopter stage, unfortunately. We're a long, long way from mainstream. So visibility of the blockchain applications is going to be very, very low. So somebody's got to raise the awareness of it. Now, whether you're in Walmart's ecosystem or whatever, Big Pharma's ecosystem, where there may be some external pressures, as an SME, you've got to hear about blockchain or hear of the benefits, you know, or somebody's got to raise the awareness to you. And this is where, you know, IBCS Group, we're kind of focusing on it. People like us and Zebra, we're a Zebra partner. That's why it's really good news that we're all working together on this. It's really up to us to get it out there, get it out to our customers, get them to start using it and showing to the world all the benefits they get from it. Otherwise, it's got to, disappear down a hole. But we need to keep the momentum going and have panels like this. But it's education, 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 and raising awareness. And that's what's going to get it to take off.
Super, thank you, Brian. Thank you. That's so good. Okay, so I think we are slowly, time is up. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining in, for putting in all this input, and for also the preparation which we spent together. I was very encouraged myself. I learned a lot throughout this time. I hope also our listeners online or in the room also have had some lesson learned and have some foods for thought. Thank you very much, and I hope we to collaborate again in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.